I have to say, I've gotten really, really upset at a couple of things I've read and seen recently from progressives, where I think they kind of missed the point of being a progressive. So, for example, the other day, we did a segment on the show where we talked about a piece in Salon that thinks that we need to regulate food consumption and literally put up stop signs at restaurants for people when they've hit the right amount of caloric intake. I mean, that's just ridiculous, man. Like, I get it. You mean well. You want people to be healthy. But in the process of doing that, you're just flat out taking away their freedom, taking away the freedom of the restaurant to serve portions that they like. I mean, that's actual, like, nanny statism. And when you cross the line, in my opinion, you can cross a line from being a progressive into being a nanny status, which is actually like authoritarianism. So it kind of meets with the right-wing portion of the spectrum, where, like, religious fundamentalists will do the same thing. Well, there was another piece today that Alternet had about gambling among senior citizens. I want to share some portions of this with you, and then I want to see if you guys agree with my takeaway on this. They say, quote, one poll found that 70% of seniors had gambled last year. Oh my God, how horrendous. A study released by the University of Pennsylvania showed more than 1 out of 10 people over the age of 65 are at risk of financial problems because of gambling. Why do American policymakers actively support and encourage dysfunctional behaviors? Little by little, the industry, aided and abetted by misguided and sometimes crooked politicians, worked to wipe away the stain of vice from gambling and rebrand it as entertainment. What gambling really does is create poverty and redistribute money toward large corporations, breaking hearts and bank accounts in the process. Allowing this to happen to our elders is a measure of our humanity and the success of our society. Right now, we aren't measuring up. Now, I could not disagree with this more. So first of all, is it true that, like, everybody who gambles eventually becomes addicted and loses all their money and they're, like, miserable? Absolutely not. In fact, I would venture to say the vast majority of people that go to the casino go once in a while on a vacation and they have their limits and they stick to their limits and they're regular people living regular lives. Just the same way that most people who drink alcohol, regular people living regular lives, they have a couple social drinks with friends. Now, do raging alcoholics exist where it ruins their life? Absolutely. But does that mean we should ban alcohol? Absolutely not. So to me, this sounds more like the pathetic moralizing of fundamentalist religious right-wing nutjobs than a progressive actually writing the article. And I guess my biggest beef is that you simply cannot in one breath talk about gay marriage has to be legal and pot has to be legal because it's an adult doing what they want without hurting anybody else. And then in the next breath say you have to ban gambling because some people get addicted and it ruins their life. But you're not being consistent if you're using those two separate standards. Why is it that when it comes to gambling and eating, the government should regulate it, and as the article argues for, even ban it or not allow it, right? But when it comes to something like marijuana and gay marriage, well, then the government's got no business being involved. You have to be consistent, man. Now, here's another example. I really respect Noam Chomsky. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. I've read so many of his books. He's spot on in his criticism on U.S. foreign policy, spot on his criticism on domestic policy. But listen to what he said here about porn.
What is your view on pornography?
Pornography is humiliation and degradation of women. It's a disgraceful activity. I don't want to be associated with it. Just take a look at the pictures. I mean, women are degraded as vulgar sex objects. It's not what human beings are. I mean, I don't even see anything to discuss.
But didn't porn performers choose to do the job and get paid?
The fact that people agree to it and are paid is about as convincing as the fact that we should be in favor of sweatshops in China, or where women are locked into a factory and work 15 hours a day, and then the factory burns down and they all die. Yeah, they were paid and they consented, but it doesn't make me in favor of it. So that argument we can't even talk about. As to the fact that it's some people's erotica, well, that's their problem. Doesn't mean I have to contribute to it. If they get enjoyment out of humiliation of women, they have a problem. But it's nothing I want to contribute to.
How should we improve the production conditions of pornography?
By eliminating degradation of women. That would improve it. Just like child abuse. You don't want to make it better child abuse. You want to stop child abuse. I suppose there's a starving child in the slums, and you say, well, I'll give you food if you'll let me abuse you. Well, I suppose there haven't been laws against child abuse, fortunately. But suppose someone were to give your argument. Well, after all, the child's starving otherwise, so you're taking away his chance to get some food if you ban abuse. Is that an argument? The answer to that is stop the conditions in which the child is starving. And the same is true here. Eliminate the conditions in which women can't get decent jobs. Not permit abusive and destructive behavior.
So if you allow men and women to get good, high-paying jobs and everybody makes a living wage, which I'm clearly in favor of, Noam Chomsky thinks all of a sudden the porn industry will go away? Or prostitution or brothels will go away? No, that's ridiculous. And again, I love Noam Chomsky, so it almost pains me to disagree with him so strongly on something, but he just compared pornography to child abuse. No, children cannot consent. They're not biologically and physiologically capable of it because they don't know what sex is yet, because they're not developed enough to know what it is. They haven't reached that point in their life. It's not even a thing to them yet, right? So being that a child cannot consent, that's why, child abuse is a problem and pedophilia is a problem and making them work in horrible conditions is a problem, clearly. But you can't compare consenting adults doing what they want to do to that. And this argument, well, they actually don't want to do what they say they want to do. How the fuck do you know? You don't know. There's so many female porn stars, male porn stars who will tell you, this is my dream job, I like what I'm doing. And also, and this is probably my biggest disagreement with him, sex is natural. He acts like it's this horrendous thing that, should never be celebrated, never be put on camera. But if it's natural and if it's something that can and should be celebrated when it's positive and when both people are willing participants, if they want to put it on camera, why the fuck not? And by the way, I think crime would shoot up drastically if pornography wasn't around anymore, or if, prostitution was nowhere to be found. It's illegal now, but you could find brothels almost everywhere, massage parlors almost everywhere. You can't compare, pornography to sweatshops and to child abuse. That's what I'm begging for from progressives is to be careful. You have to self-monitor. You have to be self-aware. Don't cross a line from being a progressive who, on liberal issues, you're supposed to say, do whatever you want to do as long as you're not hurting anybody else, right? Don't cross the line from X, I think X is better, therefore legislate X. Because then you're doing exactly what the fundamentalist religious people on the far right wing of the spectrum want to do. In this case, think about it. Noam Chomsky, in this case, agrees with John Hagee, Pat Robertson, Brian Fisher. Those are the people you want to agree with? Those are the people who would also agree with banning gambling for biblical reasons, right, and moral reasons. No, morality, when it only affects yourself, it's a subjective thing, so people should be allowed to exercise it, again, as long as they're not hurting anybody else. So, I gotta say, man, there's been, what is it, 4 examples I've given you in recent times where progressives, they're not being progressive. It's time for progressives to embrace their progressivism.